CEO gave a single dad's office to his nephew. The board reversed it immediately. They laughed when Marcus Cole walked into the conference room carrying a banker's box. Dennis Hargrove, regional CEO, third-generation Hargrove, owner of the corner office with the wraparound windows, watched from the glass partition and said something to his nephew Tyler. Not quietly, loud enough that the receptionist looked away, and the HR coordinator suddenly needed something at the bottom of her bag. "There he is," Dennis said, loud enough. The single dad who couldn't manage his own house, but thinks he can manage a division. Tyler Hargrove, 26 years old, 6 months out of a business program he'd coasted through on his uncle's alumni connection, smirked. He was already measuring the office with his eyes, already calculating where he'd put his things. Marcus set the banker's box down on the edge of the empty desk they'd assigned him. The one in the open floor plan. No door, no walls, right next to the copy machine. He didn't look up. He'd heard Dennis. He always heard Dennis. What Dennis didn't know was that the quiet man with the banker's box had spent 8 years as a senior architect of systems at a firm that had been quietly acquired 2 years ago by the company that now owned Dennis Hargrove's regional division outright. He didn't know that, but the board did. What none of them knew. Not Dennis. Not Tyler, not the HR coordinator pretending to look for something in her bag, was that by Thursday afternoon, Dennis Hargrove would be on administrative leave, Tyler would be returning to whatever junior role he could find elsewhere, and Marcus Cole would be sitting in that corner office with the wraparound windows. Not because anyone handed it to him. Because they'd looked at what he'd built. But first, Marcus had a morning to get through. He'd woken up at 5:45 that Monday, the way he always did, 30 seconds before the alarm, in that quiet space where a house holds its breath. His daughter Cora was still asleep. She was 8. She slept like nothing in the world could touch her, one arm draped over the edge of the mattress, hair spread across the pillow. He made coffee, not the good stuff, the medium roast from the discount grocery that was still drinkable if you got the ratio right. He'd figured out the ratio. You figure out a lot of things when you're raising a kid on one income, and the child support came in every other month, and sometimes not at all. He packed Cora's lunch while the coffee cooled, turkey and cheese, the crust cut off. She'd asked him once, and he'd never stopped. He put a sticky note inside, "You're my favorite thing." He did this every day. She'd told him she looked for it before she even took out the sandwich. He sat at the kitchen table with his coffee and his laptop and his files. He'd been at Hendricks Group for 4 months, managing a systems integration project that was 6 months behind schedule when he arrived. He had it on track now. He had internal documents, corrected timelines, a resequenced vendor schedule that had already saved the company approximately $340,000 in projected delays. He'd sent his manager, Patricia Walsh, the updated report last Friday afternoon. She'd replied, "Thanks, Marcus. We'll review." He picked up Cora, dropped her at school, told her to have a good day. She said, "Dad, you always say that." He said, "Because I mean it every time." He drove to the office, parked in the lot, carried his banker's box inside. That was when Dennis Hargrove saw him and said what he said. Marcus set the box down and got to work. He hadn't expected the office situation, not the specifics of it. He'd been told he'd have a workspace consistent with his senior project role. That was in the offer letter. What he found was a desk in open floor plan, wedged between the copy machine and a window that faced a concrete wall. Tyler Hargrove had the corner office. Tyler had been at the company 11 days. Marcus found Patricia Walsh at her desk around 9 a.m. She was on the phone, but she held up a finger when she saw him, the way people do when they're saying, "I see you, but please don't make this harder than it already is." He waited. She hung up. "Marcus, good morning." She said it the way people say things they've rehearsed. "I wanted to ask about the workspace assignment." Yes, she adjusted something on her desk that didn't need adjusting. "We had a reshuffle last week. Tyler is going to be leading a new initiatives team out of that space, so Tyler started 11 days ago." He did. "Yes, my offer letter specifies a private workspace for—" "I know what it says, Marcus." She glanced toward the glass partition, toward Dennis Hargrove's office. "There are some priorities we're navigating at the leadership level. I'm sure we'll find a solution." He looked at her. She didn't look back. "All right," he said. He walked back to his desk, sat down, opened his files. He didn't slam anything, didn't raise his voice. He'd learned a long time ago that some rooms don't respond to the sound of frustration. They only respond to the thing you've built, held out plainly, so nobody can look away from it. He had a lot of building to do. He opened the project file and spent the next 45 minutes rechecking his vendor reconciliation model. He'd noticed something Friday, a cascade error in the legacy data migration schedule that, if left alone, would surface as a major system failure in Q3. He'd already started the correction. He pulled out a worn yellow legal pad, the kind he'd used since graduate school, Rice University embossed in faded blue across the top. Tyler Hargrove had walked past twice now. Both times he slowed, looked at the legal pad, looked at Marcus, seemed to be calculating something. On the third pass, he stopped. "You went to Rice?" Marcus glanced up. "Engineering. Long time ago." Tyler's eyes moved to the files open on Marcus's laptop. "The spreadsheets. The modeling. What is all that?" "Work," Marcus said. Tyler waited, as if more was coming. It wasn't. He walked away. What Tyler didn't know was that the work on that laptop was the system architecture foundation that Hendricks Group had acquired for $14 million. The framework Marcus had built at his previous firm. The intellectual property that was now embedded in every system Hargrove's division depended on. The board in Chicago knew that. They'd known it when they hired him. Tyler would find out. They all would. But for now, the copy machine started up behind Marcus's head, and he turned back to his spreadsheet. Dennis Hargrove's first move came at 11. A building-wide email went out from his office, effective immediately. All project status reports will be routed through Tyler Hargrove's office before distribution to senior leadership. This ensures alignment at the executive level. Marcus read it twice. The implications were clear. Tyler, 26 years old, 11 days in, with no background in systems integration, would now have editorial authority over Marcus's project documentation before it reached the people who needed it. He printed the email, put it in a folder, opened a new document, and began drafting a memo. Patricia Walsh appeared at his desk 15 minutes later. She was careful about her expression. "I know that email was probably surprising." "It was," Marcus said. "Dennis has a vision for how the division should communicate upward." She lowered her voice. "You understand how these things go. Tyler is family. Family has a certain—" "Patricia." He said her name quietly, without edge. "My project saves this company $340,000 in Q3 delays if the corrections I've implemented hold. If Tyler is reviewing and revising those reports before they reach Chicago, and something gets changed that shouldn't be changed, that's not a communication problem. That's a liability." She opened her mouth, closed it. I'm not asking you to choose a side, he continued. I'm telling you what the documentation says, and I'm asking you to make sure the right people see it. He slid a folder across the desk. That's a copy of my Friday report, the original version, with the methodology notes attached, in case it gets revised before it reaches Chicago. She took the folder, didn't say anything, walked back to her office. Marcus turned back to his screen. He'd planted the seed. Now he had to wait. At 2 in the afternoon, his phone buzzed, not the work line, his personal cell. The name on the screen was James Whitmore. James was his former director at the firm that Hendricks Group had acquired. He was now technically a senior VP at Hendricks Group's parent company in Chicago. Marcus stood and walked to the stairwell. James, Marcus, I just got a forwarded copy of a report with about 4 pages of notes in the margins that don't look like yours. They're not. A pause. Are they Tyler Hargrove's notes? I'd assume so. James was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice had shifted, the particular flatness that meant he was choosing words carefully. This is the Q3 correction report. Yes, the one with the cascade error fix. Yes, and someone revised it before it came to us. That's what it sounds like. Another pause. Longer, Marcus. I'm going to need you to send me your original version, the unmodified one, tonight if you can. Already sent. Friday, 4:52 p.m., your direct inbox. A beat. Then something that wasn't quite a laugh. Of course you did. His tone shifted again, and this time it was harder to read. Don't do anything, don't escalate. Just keep documenting and let me make some calls. All right. And Marcus? James said. Who gave Tyler Hargrove your office? Marcus looked at the concrete wall through the stairwell window. Dennis, okay, a pause. Okay, I'll call you tomorrow. He hung up, stood in the stairwell for a moment. His hands weren't shaking. They hadn't shaken since the first month alone with Cora, when everything shook. The hands, the voice, the coffee cup he couldn't hold still at 6 in the morning, because he was scared and exhausted and utterly alone in a way that doesn't have a good word for it. He'd stopped shaking when he'd realized that shaking didn't help her, that the stillness was something he could practice, that you could get good at it, the way you got good at anything, by doing it every day whether you felt like it or not. He went back to his desk. Tyler Hargrove was sitting in his chair. Not accidentally, deliberately, leaning back with his feet crossed, reading something on his own phone, as though the desk had always been his. He looked up when Marcus approached. He didn't move. This is actually going to end up being my workspace, Tyler said. We're restructuring the floor plan. Just so you're not surprised. Marcus looked at him. When was that decided? Today, Tyler smiled the way people smile when they're holding something and want you to know it. Dennis thinks the project role might be better suited to a more collaborative environment. Less isolated. Marcus nodded once. Okay, he said. He pulled a chair from the nearest empty desk, sat down, opened his laptop on the edge of his own desk, on the small corner Tyler hadn't occupied, started working. Tyler stared at him for a moment, seemed to be waiting for a response that wasn't coming. Eventually, he stood. Left without saying anything else, Marcus pulled his laptop fully onto the desk, turned back to his screen. What Tyler didn't know was that Marcus had spent the last 40 minutes quietly downloading and time-stamping every communication, every report, every margin note, every directive in writing. He wasn't escalating. He was documenting. There was a difference. The difference mattered. What none of them knew was that in Chicago, James Whitmore had already forwarded the original Q3 report, with the revision history attached, to 3 members of the parent company board. Whatever Tyler thought was happening on the 7th floor of Hendricks Group's regional office, the story was already being written somewhere else entirely, and it would finish differently than Dennis Hargrove planned. The call came Wednesday morning. Marcus was at his desk, the same open-plan desk, same copy machine behind him, same concrete wall view. He'd been there earlier than Dennis, earlier than Tyler, earlier than almost everyone. He'd brought coffee from home in a travel mug, the discount grocery medium roast, ratio correct. At 8:47 a.m., Patricia Walsh walked across the floor in a way that telegraphed something. Her posture was different. She stopped at the HR coordinator's desk for 30 seconds, said something Marcus couldn't hear, and then walked to his desk. "Marcus, they need you in the main conference room." He looked up. "They? There are some people from Chicago." He closed his laptop, stood, followed her. The main conference room had glass walls. As they approached, Marcus could see 4 people seated at the table, 2 men and 2 women in the kind of suits that don't come from regional expense budgets. James Whitmore was one of them. Beside him was a woman Marcus recognized from the parent company's published leadership page, Dr. Sandra Okafor, executive chair of the board. Dennis Hargrove was also in the room. He was standing near the window, not seated, not in control of the geometry. Standing, his face was a careful nothing. Tyler was not there. Marcus walked in. "Marcus," James said. He stood, extended a hand. "Good to see you. You too, James." Dr. Okafor was looking at Marcus with the focused attention of someone who has already done the research and is now confirming conclusions in real time. "Mr. Cole, please, sit." He sat. Dennis shifted near the window. Nobody looked at him. "We've been reviewing the documentation from this week, Dr." Okafor began, specifically the Q3 integration report and the communication trail around it. "I want to give you the opportunity to walk us through the original methodology, your version." Marcus opened his laptop. He had it ready. He walked them through it. He spoke clearly, without drama, without any performance of grievance. The cascade error, the correction, the timeline impact, the documentation trail showing the original version, the revised version, and the timestamps of each. When he finished, the room was quiet for a moment. Dr. Okafor looked at Dennis. Dennis tried to speak. There were some communication breakdowns, and Tyler is still, "Dennis," she said it once. That was enough. "I want to be direct, Dr." Okafor said. "A senior employee with documented expertise. Expertise that is, in fact, foundational to our current operational infrastructure, was relocated to an open-plan desk beside a copy machine. A revised version of his critical project report was sent to our offices with the methodology notes altered. And a 26-year-old with no relevant experience was placed in this employee's office with editorial authority over his documentation." She looked at Dennis. "Is that an accurate summary?" Dennis looked at a point somewhere between the table and the door. The intention was to integrate Tyler into a meaningful. "That's not what I asked." Silence. One of the other Chicago executives, Marcus didn't know his name, but his title would turn out to be Chief Compliance Officer, was writing something on a legal pad. "Mr. Cole," Dr. Okafor said, "I want to apologize on behalf of this board for what you experienced this week, and I want to ask you a question." She leaned forward slightly. "The Northwest office leadership position opened last quarter. We haven't filled it. It requires the exact background in systems integration and project architecture that you have. Is that a conversation you'd be willing to have?" Marcus looked at her. He let a moment pass, not from hesitation, but from the particular stillness that had become his practice. "Yes," he said. "I'm willing to have that conversation." Dr. Okafor nodded, looked at the chief compliance officer. He nodded back. "Dennis," she said, without turning to face him, "please step out. Someone from HR will be with you shortly." Dennis Hargrove looked at Marcus. Marcus met his eyes for a moment, not with triumph, not with satisfaction. Just looked at him the way you look at something that happened, that is now finished. Dennis walked out. The door closed behind him. Dr. Okafor turned back to Marcus. "Now, tell me about the Q3 implementation from the beginning. I want to understand the full scope of what you've been building." Marcus opened his files, began to explain. Outside the glass walls of the conference room, the floor was very quiet. The HR coordinator wasn't looking in her bag anymore. Patricia Walsh was standing very still near her office door. The copy machine for once wasn't running. And somewhere in the building, Tyler Hargrove was in a different meeting. A shorter one. By Friday, the details had settled into place, the way things do when an institution decides it's serious. Dennis Hargrove was placed on indefinite administrative leave pending a full internal review. The letter was delivered Thursday afternoon by HR and 2 representatives from the compliance team. He cleaned out his personal items, not the office. That would take longer. There were procedures, and took the elevator to the parking structure. His keycard deactivated at 4:00 p.m. Marcus heard about it from Patricia Walsh, who stopped by his desk Thursday evening when most of the floor had already cleared out. "I thought you'd want to know," she said. He nodded. He felt nothing that resembled satisfaction. Just a quiet acknowledgement, the kind that settles in when something long out of alignment finally rights itself. "For what it's worth," Patricia said, "I should have handled Monday differently." "Yes," he said, "you should have." She nodded. Seemed to have expected that. "Are you taking the Northwest position?" "I'm considering it." She looked at him for a moment, then looked away. "You're good at this, Marcus, better than most people here realized." He thanked her. She left. He stayed another 20 minutes, finishing a report. Then he packed his bag, put his legal pad in his briefcase, and took the elevator down to the parking structure. He had to pick up Cora. Tyler Hargrove's tenure at Hendricks Group ended Thursday morning, a fact that was communicated to him in a meeting that lasted, by most accounts, under 15 minutes. He'd been at the company for 18 days. His exit was handled with the standard formalities: paperwork, a box, a deactivated badge. He tried, at some point during the conversation, to explain that he'd been following his uncle's direction. The HR representative had heard that kind of thing before. Dennis had referred him to 3 of his own contacts at peer companies before the week was out. 2 of them called back. 1 did not. Some networks are generous. They protect their own. But networks have limits, and those limits tend to show when compliance teams start making calls. 3 weeks later, Marcus drove Cora to school on a Thursday morning. She was wearing new sneakers, the ones she'd pointed at in the window of the shoe store 2 months ago. The bright orange ones she'd said were probably too expensive. "It's okay, Dad." He'd bought them last Saturday. Watched her face when she opened the box. She wore them to school every day since. He dropped her off. She turned at the school entrance and waved. A specific wave. 2 pumps. Something she'd done since kindergarten. He waited until she was through the door before he pulled away. He always waited. The drive to the new office took 12 minutes. His office, the one with the wraparound windows, looked out over the north end of the city. He kept the blinds at half tilt, the way he liked it. Light without glare, a view without distraction. He'd brought his legal pad. The Rice University embossing was worn now, most of the letters faded. He'd had it since graduate school, refilled the pages 4 times. He carried it the way some people carry photographs. He set it on the desk, opened his laptop, started the morning the way he always started it. The most important problem first, the noise dealt with later. His phone buzzed. A text from James Whitmore in Chicago, board call confirmed for Monday. They want the full Northwest integration framework. Yours to present. He put the phone face down, picked up his pen. That evening, Cora sat at the kitchen table with her homework spread in every direction. Math on one side, a book report on the other, colored pencils rolling toward the edge. She was telling him about a girl in her class who'd said something unkind at lunch. She wasn't asking for advice. She was just telling him, the way she did, working through the shape of it by putting it into words. He listened. He did not interrupt. He did not try to fix it before she was finished. When she was done, she looked at him. What would you do? He thought about Dennis Hargrove standing at the conference room window, about Tyler measuring the corner office with his eyes, about the morning he'd set the banker's box on a desk next to a copy machine and decided to just do the work. I'd keep doing what you know is right, he said. Let the work speak for itself. Cora considered this. Even when it's hard, especially then. She nodded, seemed to file this away, went back to her math. He made dinner. She set the table without being asked. She'd started doing that recently, small things, unprompted. He noticed every one of them. They ate. She told him about the rest of her day. He told her a little about his. Not the complicated parts. The parts a kid could hold. After dinner, she brought her book report to the couch and sat close enough that he could read over her shoulder without being asked to. He did. He caught 2 spelling errors and 1 sentence that didn't quite say what she meant. He pointed them out gently, the way she preferred. Question first. Answer second. By 8, she was asleep. He did the dishes. Checked the project files one more time, made a note on his legal pad, closed the laptop. He looked around the apartment. Same size as always, same furniture. But the stack of unpaid bills on the counter was shorter. The kitchen had food in it, the real kind. Cora's orange sneakers were by the front door, next to his shoes. Lined up the way she'd taken to lining them up, parallel. Neat, as if that was simply how it was done. He turned off the kitchen light. Some things change slowly. Some things change all at once. Most things change in the quiet in-between, one decision at a time. One day where you do the right thing even though nobody's watching. One morning where you set down the box and start working. He went to bed. Cora was still asleep. Tomorrow, he'd pick up coffee from the good place on the corner. He'd been meaning to.